Welcome to Meteor Interviews, a series of interviews with Meteor developers, community, and core team members. Today I'm speaking with Mike Risse, founder of Mati.io, Velocity core team member, and developer of MeteorPad. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Paul.
If you've seen enough Meteor code samples on the web, you've probably seen MeteorPad, which is a hosted Meteor development environment, usable with just a browser, and with shareable URLs like JSFiddle or CodePen, but with Meteor server code available too. So my goal today is to learn how MeteorPad works under the hood. But first, before we get into MeteorPad, Mike, I just want to say Mati is amazing. I can't believe I didn't see this earlier, so I just discovered it a couple days ago. And I tried it out. It's so for anybody that hasn't seen it, it's a collaborative code editor for remote pair programming. You can embed it in a Hangout. You can even share your terminal output. So at OKGrow we use Screen Hero for pair programming and that kind of stuff. But this is way more lightweight. So it would be really, I think, interesting to use for like just a quick question with somebody, or maybe even like a job interview, that kind of thing. So is Mati built with Meteor?
Mati is built in Meteor. There's some components that are just written in Node.js, but most of the application that you see and really most of the code for Mati is built in Meteor.
Cool. So I'm guessing it uses some of the same components as MeteorPad.
It does use a little bit of the same components, actually less than I originally intended. First, when I set out to build MeteorPad, I thought I was going to basically just tweak Mati, and it ended up that there was actually quite a few different things between the two projects. MeteorPad, most of the logic for MeteorPad deals with spinning up these small virtual machines, whereas most of the difficult code with Mati is supporting multiple users at the same time.
Okay. Well, so maybe let's talk about what MeteorPad is. Can you explain what it is?
Yeah, are you looking for more of like what it is to the user? Or what it is.
I guess just that maybe. So I compared it to JSFiddle in my intro there, but I think there's actually a lot more going on. It's kind of like Meteor app hosting, so I feel like I didn't do it justice. So maybe just for anyone that hasn't tried out, like what would your description of MeteorPad be for someone that hadn't seen it?
Yeah, well, I actually usually do describe it to people as JSFiddle for Meteor. And it's intended to be pretty simple, One of the main goals of it originally was just to make it possible for people to try out Meteor really quickly. So you don't have to download anything, you don't have to install anything. You can just start messing around with server-side web framework in the browser.
Okay.
It does do a little bit more than something like JSFiddle, I think, mostly because it has to run a server per pad. And there's some difficulties dealing with the Meteor package system, keeping those versions up to date that you wouldn't have to deal with if it was a client-side only thing.
Right. So you actually start up a new Meteor server for every pad, or actually I'm guessing for every connected client?
It's per pad. So if you have 3 tabs in your browser with MeteorPad running, that's 3 different servers.
Right. Okay. So can you explain how it works?
Yeah, I'll try to give you a quick overview, and then maybe you can ask questions where I don't explain it well enough.
Okay.
But basically, when you go to MeteorPad.com, it spins up a Docker container, which will be running the Meteor process, and it runs that inside of a tty.js process, and that's basically a way to show terminal output inside of a web browser.
Okay.
And once it detects that the server is up and running, it lets the MeteorPad know that, or lets the Meteor app know that, and it opens up your app in iframe.
Okay. So you mentioned Docker. Do you want to?
Yep.
Can you explain what Docker is?
Yeah, so I kind of think of Docker as lightweight virtual machines. I know they don't like that description themselves, and Docker is a lot more than that. But I think that's a pretty good way to think of it initially, is it's a virtual machine that can start in milliseconds instead of like half a minute. And it's one that doesn't take up a huge amount of memory for each additional Docker container. So you might be able to run something like 10 virtual machines on a given box. You could run hundreds of Docker containers. And what limits the number of servers that can run on one of these boxes is really mostly just the amount of memory that a Meteor process takes up.
Okay, so it's not adding much more. It's sharing the same kernel with the OS, I think, and it's not adding much overhead, so you can start it really quickly.
Yeah.
So basically, you're just running a Meteor server process in development mode
Hmm.
inside a Docker container,
Yeah.
and then okay, so then you're connecting it with tty.js up to the browser, so you can see the terminal output, or sorry,
Hmm.
the log output from or the console output from the server.
Yep.
Okay, and so are you using anything to manage those processes? Like, there's been a lot of talk lately about Kubernetes and CoreOS. Are you using anything like that?
I'm not at the moment. I definitely want to explore Kubernetes, um, because I think that I sort of started working on this before Kubernetes was mature. And I think I'm probably solving some problems that Kubernetes does as well. And I'm sure I'm not doing as good a job as a team of 20 really smart developers at Google are. So,
Okay. So Kubernetes is I guess it's a management layer for Docker containers. So at least that's my understanding. I've never haven't done anything more than read the Wikipedia page about it.
yeah,
Um, so
I've
you're
done
probably
majority on.
you're probably doing a lot of that same stuff. So is there a lot of work that you have to do to start up the containers, and then you do you kill them right away when the Meteor client is disconnected?
Yeah, so I kill the containers pretty aggressively as I forget exactly how much memory each one of those takes off the top of my head, but it's definitely non-trivial. I want to say like 200 or 300 megabytes.
Hmm.
Um, so if somebody closes their tab, I think it kills the container in like half a minute. And if somebody like doesn't move their mouse for 5 minutes, it does the same.
Hmm. So have you, speaking of the amount of memory it takes, um,
Hmm.
have you had any problems with load or scaling?
Uh, Not too much with load or scaling. And some of it has just been uh, I need like a lot of boxes sort of per to support MeteorPad, but it scales pretty well, and then I can just throw more boxes at it.
Hmm.
So that hasn't been too much of a problem. I'd say that monitoring has been trickier because there's a lot of different moving pieces that can break. The Docker server can go down. It can lose its connection to Mongo. The disk can overflow. But I guess there's just mostly that there's like errors that I'm not used to catching. So it's
Hmm.
more than just the normal is it responding on port 80 kind of
Right.
thing that you do normally with a web app.
And do you do anything to monitor the individual containers as they're run?
No, I
They're pretty temporary, so it's and somebody could just, I guess, reload their. Well, if you reload the tab, would that start it up again?
that'll start a new container
Right.
actually
Right.
and kill the old one.
Right. Okay.
That's a pretty tricky problem, and it's one that I should probably look into more in the future. But it's pretty hard for me to tell whether somebody's app is just broken because they broke it and they're doing something stupid, or
Yeah.
whether it's a problem with MeteorPad, right?
Right. Okay, so where are the files stored? So when you start a new Meteor pad, you get like the leaderboard app,
Right.
and it gives you three sample files, like the server, the client, and oh, more than three. So and you also get CSS and HTML.
Yeah.
So where are those files stored?
So they're just stored in a database actually. Um, and then when the container is started, those the contents of the database are basically flushed to disk, and
Okay.
then a Meteor app is ran there.
Okay. So and anytime you save it, it'll end up being persisted in the database for when you
Yeah.
visit that pad again.
Yeah.
And then while it's running, it's the Meteor app is using it from the file system. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, because the idea there is that like I really don't want to lose people's files, like the work that they put into a MeteorPad,
Yeah.
but the container that is used to run the app is something that uh, is treated with less care, right?
Right.
Because you can create a new one in 5 seconds if you need to.
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. And then what about the database? Where's that? So the app, the Meteor app that you're working on in the MeteorPad, it has a database somewhere that just is automatically created. So where's
Right.
that?
So there's like a small Mongo database that runs on each of like the Docker hosts,
Right.
um, and that gets blown away pretty regularly too. So don't get attached to the data in your MeteorPad apps.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I've noticed that when you come back, it's wiped out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I might try to like make that persist a little bit longer, but at least for now, I'm sort of trying to train people to treat it as disposable.
hmm Yep, that makes sense. The only time I've had an issue with that was I was reproducing a bug, and the bug involved a Facebook having it required having Facebook login, so OAuth
Uh,
login, and then in order to do that, you have to set up the OAuth secret and everything, and that has to be stored actually in the database.
yeah.
But anyway, I'm sure that's not that's I think the using it as a container for learning and demoing things makes more sense to have it blown away as well.
Yeah. That is something I've thought about though, is how can I make demos with login? And there's also some security issues there where don't really want people putting like their client in secret
Yep.
out for the world to see on a MeteorPad.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Totally.
yeah, if you or anybody listening has ideas there, I'd be curious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe you could make it an option and just have a big warning that says, "Don't don't trust." Make sure that you don't put anything in here that you don't want to be public. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can add packages, and it looks like all of Atmosphere is available. How does that work?
hmm Um, Essentially, what I'm doing is writing a process that brings down the catalog, which is, I want to say, Meteor Update or something, and then reading that into a Mongo database. And the reason I'm doing that is just so it's like faster to search and that kind of thing.
hmm
Um, that process is not as smooth as it should be, and the packages get out of sync every now and then.
hmm
So I'm aware of the issue. It will be fixed soon. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Well, I haven't noticed. So
It's mostly package authors that will complain to me. Like they'll publish a package and say like, "Hey, my new version isn't there yet,"
right.
and there's just a manual step that I have to do to update the catalog at the moment.
Okay. So the MeteorPad app itself keeps a copy of that of everything from Atmosphere synced into its own Mongo
Yeah.
into a collection on its own database. Okay. All right. And so when you fork a MeteorPad, I assume it just makes a copy of all your files which are stored in Mongo,
hmm
gives it a new URL. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And so for the editor, how does that work? It's got
So
a
the
pretty
editor
nice
is
code
Ace.
editor, like syntax highlighting and everything.
Yeah. Ace is a great project. I really didn't have to do a whole lot to make it work. Ace is what we used with Mad Eye as well. So that is like probably the biggest piece that did get reused between Mad Eye and MeteorPad. And we have like a package called Reactive Ace, which basically wraps it. I wouldn't recommend anyone use it. It's not very well maintained and is sort of just good enough for us. But
Reactivate
yeah.
your package. Okay. Yep. Cool. Okay. So for Mad Eye, you use Ace Editor and you use your own Reactive Ace package, make it work in real
hmm
time. Do you do any kind of so for Mad Eye for the real time collaboration stuff? Do you do any
hmm
any type of conflict resolution? Like
Um, yeah. So I'm not sure how much you looked at like the features there, but like if you have two people editing at the same time, it works pretty well. Um, and it uses something called operational transform.
hmm
Uh,
Does it use Share.js?
it does use Share.js. Uh, Since then, there's like FirePad. It seems to be what most people are using now. If I was to do it again, that's probably what I would use, just because it's one less service to administer.
Okay, so is FirePad a service provided by Firebase?
It is, yeah.
That was a wild
And
guess. I've never seen it. Okay.
yep.
Okay, so it's not like a JavaScript library that you could use. You would just plug it on top of a hosted service by Firebase. Okay.
Yeah. But right now, yeah, we're running like our own share.js server
Okay.
for Mad
All right. Cool. So for MeteorPad, when you start up a new app,
hmm
I can see in the console output from the server that it's starting on port 3000, and it looks like it's
Yep.
in development mode.
hmm
Um, so it's not doing the production stuff with your assets. So I'm assuming that you've got a proxy layer as well, because the app is available to the user at something.meteorpad.com.
Yep.
So you've got something proxying from each one of those host names to a whole bunch of Docker containers on port 3000 on each one.
Yep. That's right.
How does that work?
Um, Pretty much exactly the way you described it. So when you look at that, the URL that you see in MeteorPad, I think it's something like app and then a uuid dot
Yep.
meteorpad dot com.
Yep.
So the proxy basically just looks at that first part, then looks up that ID, figures out which port it's being mapped to by
Mm-hmm.
Docker,
Mm-hmm.
and forwards the traffic there.
Okay. Cool. Right, because it's 3000 internally inside Docker, and then Docker probably maps that to something else outside of itself.
Yep.
And so you've got one instance with a bunch of Docker containers and a whole lot of different ports to map
Yeah.
to. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. And that's just like some simple Node.js proxy that I wrote.
Okay, nice. Um, and so another interesting thing to note is the developer tools console is for MeteorPad itself. So you did a nice little message in there that says you're probably looking in the wrong place. You want to open the app with the direct URL and then use the console there.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's something I watched a lot of people do it, and it's always kind of like frustrating and sad for me is watching people try to interact with the client side of their app
Yeah.
by opening the dev tools, which is like the most natural thing in the world to do.
Yeah, no,
And
it's the thing that you would automatically do, and then you realize, oh wait, no, this is the MeteorPad app, and then I remember the first time I used it, I had a moment of thinking, what? And then it all made sense because you also have that nice little arrow button that shows you how to open a direct page right to your own app. So it's very nicely done, I
yeah,
think.
oh,
Cool.
thanks.
So are you worried about security issues at all? Like you've got you're providing server resources. Um, is there anything? Are you worried about anybody doing anything bad on that? I can't think really
Uh,
what. Like I don't know what you would even do. Mine Bitcoin with a Meteor app or something. Launch
yeah, I
DOS
mean,
attacks.
it's definitely a concern, and so far I think it like has pretty much flown under the radar. I haven't had to do any kind of like things for making sure that I'm not getting too much traffic from like a given IP or anything. But
Yeah.
I think as it becomes more popular, it's definitely something to worry about.
Hope I didn't give anybody any ideas. So, but you have to keep your browser tab open. The container will be shut down as soon as you close it. So
Yeah.
that should help.
And one of the things that Docker is pretty good at is like showing you how many resources these different containers are using.
Right.
So at some point, it's probably a good idea to monitor those a little bit more closely and see if there's
Yeah.
suspicious activity going on.
Yeah, and you could easily throttle that, I'm sure.
hmm
Yep. Cool. Okay. So, what are the main uses for MeteorPad? What are people doing with it?
There's a few things. I think the best use case really is just like for showing something off. So if you're a package author and you want to show how your package works, you can create like a small meteor pad.
Hmm.
Um, there's like one for Angular. There's some for like famous views. And I haven't been working on MeteorPad too actively for the past couple months, but I'm going to start picking up on it again here soon. And one of the things I really want to do is just make a ton of MeteorPads for all these different packages so people are able to try things out quickly and
Yeah.
figure out what to use in their app. As even though it doesn't sound like much of a barrier to type Meteor add uh, package name, it's a lot more work to do that and figure out what a sample app looks like than it is to just click a link.
Yep, definitely. Yep. And yeah, and if you want to try something out, you might not have it might not work right away with the with whatever app you're thinking of. So it'd be kind of nice to be able to just see it in a pretty plain sample app that has it working already that you can browse the code.
Yeah, and then kind of along those lines, like having this like simple app. If you're able to find a bug in that simple app, then it makes it really easy to do a bug reproduction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cool. Yep. I've used it for the same thing for bug reproductions, things like that. Um, and yeah, and you see a lot of people using links to it from Stack Overflow to demo how something works.
mhm.
Nice. Okay. So what's next for MeteorPad? Do you have plans for any new features?
There's a lot of features I'd like to work on. I'm still trying to figure out what makes the most sense. Um, I'd say in terms of like the urgent issues, like making the packages like sync automatically
Right.
is up there.
Yeah.
I think some just like simple things like making the panes resizable or hideable will make it a lot nicer. So if you can make the terminal like hidden on a small laptop screen.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say like the bigger features that I'm thinking about are things like would it be cool to add the collaborative features from MatEye to MeteorPad?
Yeah.
Um, what about making it so you can like upload an existing Meteor project into MeteorPad? One of the big questions that I'm kind of struggling with now is what is MeteorPad? Is it just a tool for showing off like the cool things you did with Meteor, or could it be like a lightweight development environment where you could fix a bug like and commit back to GitHub
Yeah.
without cloning anything down to your machine?
Yeah.
I think we're still a ways off from like the sort of dream of cloud-based IDEs, but I think that there's some use cases for them that make sense today. But I also hesitate to take MeteorPad down that route just because it's a pile of work to get it right.
Yep. I guess, but also if you think about it, it's also hosting too. I mean, there's really not there's almost aside from it being all public, which is kind of just like a choice that you made. It's nothing. There's nothing that inherent about it that it has to be that way. But there's actually not that much different from doing Meteor deploy, aside from the command line that makes it work.
Mm-hmm.
To being able to if you could have a simple command to deploy to MeteorPad, it's kind of similar. So I think you could go in various different ways with it as well. Have you ever
That's
considered?
def
Sorry, go ahead.
yes, we've considered it. We did talk about having a deploy button, and that's something that like would require a Meteor account, obviously,
Yeah.
uh, and just like deployed to Meteor's hosting.
Well,
So,
actually, I meant like it almost is similar to it is hosting itself is what I mean, right?
oh, I see.
So you've got I mean you're right now you're shutting the containers down when the tab's not is not open in the browser, but different ways you could go with it.
Yeah.
Have you thought of
Well, I
making
think
it?
about that sometimes for like sort of the non like people that aren't uh, hardcore developers yet. Like I think a lot of us forget, but like learning Git is not a light undertaking,
Yeah.
and it's like pretty easy to be constantly destroying all of your work and losing it and not being sure like
Yeah.
how to resolve a merge conflict. And I kind of think if you could take some of the headache out of that, like it'd be a much friendlier environment for somebody new. So if they can just like edit on something like MeteorPad, press save, and then now there's a website that they can point people to.
Yeah.
That's that's kind of nice. Technically, there's quite a few things that like about how MeteorPad works that don't make sense for hosting, but they could all change. You don't want to be running in development mode.
Hmm.
You probably need to be running in a container with more resources,
Right.
and you don't want to shut it down when nobody's looking at the code, obviously.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I don't know. It's like stuff that I'm thinking about, and I'm also thinking about like how can MeteorPad be taken to platforms that aren't Meteor.
Yeah. Very cool. Have you thought of making a business out of it? Like maybe a
I
full
have,
featured IDE with the current MeteorPad as kind of like a freemium thing?
yeah. I mean, so far, like I've worked with MDG to make MeteorPad, but they were generous enough to let me uh, keep the rights to the source code.
Yep.
Um, and I think that most of like there's not too much in the MeteorPad source that knows about Meteor. It's mostly about running a server process and having an iframe that shows people their web app, right?
Right.
There's the stuff that deals with packages that's Meteor specific, but that's really the big Meteor specific thing, I would say. Um, so right now, the idea I'm toying with is sort of a playground for APIs. So let's say I wanted to try out the LinkedIn API. I can just press a button and start trying out the LinkedIn API.
Yeah.
I haven't really done the necessary business development or customer discovery. I don't know what
Yeah.
the right word for it is, but I
Yeah.
think it might be a service that companies would pay for to sort of promote their APIs. So that's the first thing I'm going to probably explore. But
Cool.
I'm really just very interested in the cloud development environments in general, as you can probably tell
Yeah,
from
I can.
MadEye and MeteorPad.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Cool. And I guess you could also go the other way and make it even more of a community project. Have you thought of that?
I definitely have. I'd like to at least open source parts of it because people are pointing out things that are broken in MeteorPad, and I don't always have time to fix it. And it's kind of sad when people are willing to fix something but they can't. Um, I think if I was to just open source MeteorPad the way it is now, it would be too awkward for people to develop for it, for anyone to make meaningful contributions. But I don't think it has to be that way. I think that with some work, I could make it something that could be more of a community project, and I definitely hope to do that at
Yeah,
some point.
that's cool. Well, I think it's definitely a tough decision, like how to make something open enough that other people can contribute and improve it, but still, not and make sure that it's done in a way that people can actually that it's accessible to people that want to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and still keep control of it in a way that you could actually use it for commercial reasons of your own at some point. So I think Atmosphere walks the same line as well.
Yeah, I think lots of open source projects struggle with that. Um,
Cool. Okay. All right. Well, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing all that with me. So,
yeah, no problem.
so if our listeners would like to get a hold of you, how can they do so?
Um, I probably respond best to email, honestly, which is for me is mike@madeye.io. Um, I'm also on Twitter. I'm not super active there, but that would work too. My handle is Rissem, Rassem.
Okay.
But before I sign off, I wanted to ask you like what you would do with MeteorPad, or what direction you'd be most excited to see it go.
Yeah. Well, I guess I gave a hint that I'm kind of interested in the in like where you could take it from a freemium perspective. So like
Uh-huh.
I could see it being something that you could use as a full on IDE. I think
Hmm.
there's probably a lot of work to make it competitive with some of the other ones, but you're definitely on your way there. Um, I've used it for bug reproductions, and I think it would be interesting to have data, um, the option to have the data stored, but then
Hmm.
you struggle with it whether it's okay to have it public.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's what I think is pretty cool. And like the collaborative stuff that you've done with Mad Eye, that makes it pretty interesting for the cloud based like a collaborative editing type thing.
Hmm.
So maybe point it at a Git repo and just start editing. For example, at OKGrow, we use Screen Hero, and so
Hmm.
we would just you share the whole screen. But it would also be interesting to just um, to be able to start up a say some private cloud-based editor pointed at at the Git repo and be able to work in kind of a third environment. It's not mine, it's not yours, but it's kind of just a third shared one.
Yeah.
Work in there, do some stuff, commit directly back to the Git repo.
Hmm.
That's something we haven't actually tried, but I think I think the whole area of cloud-based IDEs is definitely I think that's definitely where we're going to go in the future at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just a question of when.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. The tricky thing is when you get into trying to test platform-specific things like Cordova. There's some things that we do that involve starting up virtual machines and things, but
right.
like VirtualBox to test Windows. But I think that that's all available in the cloud as well too.
Yeah. I'd actually argue that some of that is better in a cloud.
Yeah,
Like I find when I'm developing on a cloud machine, I can point something like browser stack at it
yeah,
pretty easily, and you don't have to muck with setting up a tunnel or any of that kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Mike. So I would check out MeteorPad if you haven't already. Try madeye.io and and get in touch with Mike at madeye.io. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thank you.